What's up, guys? David DeSell here, your host of the Business with the Boys podcast, and as always, joined with my co-host Landon Troyer, and we are here with part two of Ryan's episode. And Landon, we let's just say there were some moments I felt inside that I was incredibly frustrated hearing about the stuff that Ryan had to deal with, both inside prison and just the clusterfuck of getting out of prison. But what were some of the things that I'll just ask this that pissed you off?
Yeah, I mean, just the blatancy of like how obvious it was with some of the stuff that comes to light that proves his innocence, but you don't get anywhere, right? Like it's crazy. It's like these guys are locked up for something they didn't do. Like, let's get them out day one that we know they didn't do this. But that's not the case at all. This goes on for years,
A decade.
a
Yeah.
decade, right? Like it's crazy to me that we can have a system that is, I mean, at some point in time it's like, why can't you just use some common sense, folks, right? But yeah, that's the circumstances he was dealt, and it was complete shit. But yeah, there was a lot of things in this episode that struck me. I don't know about you, but when he was talking about, when he got put in the hole, right? And one, just the reason he was there being a complete, again, political setup. And then two, when he talks about, hearing people getting beaten in cells, and just, there's some eerie stuff there that this dude's lived through. And it's just my admiration for him goes up even further just after hearing the depths of his story. I mean, him and I are close friends now, but it's crazy, man. The guy's been through some shit. I don't think that's stuff that ever gets put to bed.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was most frustrating to me to hear, but also then envision beyond what he shared is the fact that like prison isn't a safe place, right? So you could be locked up innocent. And the way prison works is you could look at someone the wrong way and get shanked. So you could die any day and you're in there when you shouldn't be. And if that were to like that would just be such a tragic loss of life on top of the tragedy of being in there in the first place. But I will say, one of the things that really stuck out to me is the support and the resilience that he had from his family, his mom, particularly to his dad as well. Like that was really
He
touching to
essentially
hear.
forfeited his life for fighting
His
for Ryan's
son,
innocence. Yeah, I
right?
mean, just a stand up. Like I said, I can't wait to meet the guy. I'm hoping I can actually meet him in person next time he's in Nebraska, because yeah, you watch the documentary and you're like, holy shit. As a father myself, like I would aspire to be, what that guy does for his son for sure.
And then even too, like hearing about how, like, let's just say like it was his mom and his dad and some other family members and a couple attorneys like fighting on his behalf. Like, I'm willing to bet he'd still be in prison, but they were able to build a community of damn near 100,000 people in the Facebook group that wasn't going to stop.
Accountability, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. They put it in the public eye, and that really helped a lot. And frankly, like thankfully, Ryan's story took off in the public eye, but there's someone I think he said like every day that gets locked up that's innocent, and like it's tough to build a community when it's so frequent. So fortunately, it happened for him, but there's plenty of other people. So that said, but we don't want to give away the house, so to speak, and tell you
Yeah,
everything. So,
the one thing I would say is I'm excited for, and I hope that we help with, obviously, is I think Ryan truly can be a face of getting some of this criminal justice system fixed, right? I mean, the dude's got the looks, he's got the brains, he's got like the story, obviously. If there's anybody that can do this, and the dude is driven, trust me, like he's driven. Um, I'm excited to see. I mean, I truly think he could change this whole system for the better, and ultimately, I hope our message and platform gives him the ability to have other people get on board with this. I know I'm planning on fully supporting him in whatever way he needs on that side of things. I know you are as well. So hopefully when you take away and listen to this, just know that in the future we'll keep updates coming on how you guys as listeners can help as well, because this is something that needs change. I think we can all get on board with that for sure.
100%. Well, and for everyone listening, we appreciate you as always. So thanks for your time and attention, and let's dive into the episode.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That mean you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back.
So Ryan, we ended last time, and appreciate you coming back for part two, of course, but we ended last time you had shared just the wild circumstances of you going to prison in the first place, and shared a little bit about what it was like there and kind of how you maintained a positive mindset over time and worked on yourself, protected yourself, frankly. And I do want to spend some time with the three of us today learning how you got out, your dad's role in that, perhaps attorneys and families' roles in that as well. But before we do that, it wasn't just that you got 10 years taken from you, but like you could have also died in there. Like prison isn't like a, hey man, what's up? There's like some crazy shit that happens, presumably. Like unpack a couple wild stories, as I'm sure there were plenty, but let's pick a couple just to show the extreme nature of what it's like in those four walls.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good to be back with you, David. Landon, always a pleasure. Prison actually, honestly, it's great, man. I love it. You're free to just sit in a cell all day and have no worries. No, it's actually it is what you think. It's a terrible place. I think we were discussing last time, kind of digging yourself out of a hole mentally, dealing with some depression and frustration, anger. You're down on the world because of what they've done to you. And being in this environment where ultimately you look around and everyone is depressed. It's like the walls are gray, the clothes are gray, it's all concrete. The food is the grayest, blandest mash of crap you've ever seen. Like it is a sad place. Like everyone there is pissed off and angry and sad. So finding your way out of that is the goal, right? That is the number one challenge. We always think about the violence in prison and the threat to your life on a daily basis, but that to me was one of the most difficult hurdles to overcome. Uh, finding my way through the sadness of what these people experience, right? I mean, everyone there is missing out on real life. They're missing their families, they're missing opportunities to create a life for themselves. They're missing watching kids raise, everything. Like it's a terrible environment. And that I think a lot of people nowadays do believe in energy. I'm not like one of those holistic type of people. I don't disagree with it, but it's not my vibe. But the reality is if you're around negative people, you're going to become negative. If you're around positive, they say like the five people you hang out with most is kind of what you're going to turn into, right? So surround yourself with smart, successful, happy, outgoing people, and you'll probably end up that way. Prison doesn't really have those people. So you got to make yourself one of them. You have to be that in the face of everything. So that to me was the number one thing. Like, when I realized and I really opened my eyes in there, I was like, this is going to be an uphill battle every single day, and it is up to me 100% to navigate that. That's when things really started to turn around for me in my life, and even to this day, I carry that forward. Like I was talking about, there's some things I've written, some in my previous book, mostly in the upcoming works that I plan on doing. But beyond that, there is the reality of constant fear. There's the reality of constant just threat to your life on a daily basis. You don't know what the person next to you is thinking or doing. The reality is that they're in there for doing something that you don't think most people would ever do. Like the world I grew up in, no one I knew went to prison. No one was incarcerated. Some kids maybe sold some drugs and did 30-day on some little thing in juvie or something like that. And that was enough. I was like, oh, crazy. Wow.
Well, correct
It
me
is
if I'm
what it
wrong,
is.
Ryan, but like they may not even have something personally against you, right? It may be they're clicked up with somebody and they're told to jump off and go shank somebody, right? Like
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
like
Absolutely.
it may not even be that the guy has an issue with you. It's just that, in there it could be the color of your skin's wrong and somebody needs a message needs to be sent and go send it.
Certainly. Certainly. There are a few instances where there's just misunderstandings, or you don't even realize you're doing something that might offend somebody, or looking the wrong way, or you might actually step on the back of someone's foot in a chow line. Seen people get their jaw broke for that, literally completely broke. They go to the hole for a year. I remember one time I was again in the chow hall, and I'm just looking around, checking people out or whatever. I'm not looking at anybody in the eye. I'm minding my own business, and I think everything's all good. And next thing I know, this guy comes up to me on the yard, like later that day or the day later, and he's a big dude. He's definitely bigger than me, and you can tell he's got the crazy eyes, right? He's like, I don't care if he was smaller than me. I'm pretty sure based on his crazy eyes, he could have whooped my butt. Um, so he's like, "What's your problem, man?" I'm like, "Excuse me, like, what's your name? I don't even know who you are. Why are we talking?" And he's like, "Yeah, you were checking me out in the chow hall, man. You were staring me down. Like, what's the problem?" And I'm like, "Dude, honestly, I don't. I mean, I've seen you before, but I don't think I've ever really looked at you. Like, I don't know who you are or why, what the issue is." He's like, "Nah, man, you were fucking staring me down. We got a problem?" And I'm like, I don't think so, but I mean, like, I don't know why you're approaching me. And there's like no way out of it, right? Because you're not trying to like just be weak and back down and be like, well, no problem, man, no problem, whatever, it's cool. But you're also like, I literally don't actually have a problem. So you're walking this fine line between not having a problem and not having a problem. And I'm like, look, dude, I got nothing, no issues with you. If you want to create a problem out of nothing, I mean, we can go there. But I'm telling you right now, like I was not staring you down. I wasn't checking you. I wasn't side eyeing you. I don't know who the hell you are. And we can end it at that, and I'll be just as happy, and I'll make sure never to look your way again. And if you want to create a problem out of it, I really don't want to, but we can go ahead and do that. And he's like, all right, then. He's like, well, just don't look my way again. I'm like, all right, dude. And it's one of those things where I feel like people test you like that. Like, I'm pretty sure I didn't look at this dude, but they want to see how you're going to react. They want to see if you're going to pop off at him, or you're going to act tough, or you're going to shrink down and let them step on you, right? Because if they do, now they basically own you or control you. And that was a very subtle way of doing it. I've seen other ones where, I mean, I got to the point in prison where like I wouldn't even let people talk to me anymore. They approach me, and I know it's some BS. Like, I mean, I was probably there 7 years once on the yard, and I'm walking back and forth, and a lot of people, you work out, you don't got your shirt on or nothing. And I mean, I was jacked, I was huge. And this guy comes from some other prison. He hits the yard, and you can tell he's a booty bandit. Like, he's a creep. And I see him side eyeing me. So I'm like, nah, maybe that's what I was doing to this other dude, but who knows? So this guy's side eyeing me. And I'm like, I don't like the way this dude's looking at me, but I don't say nothing. And I'm walking back and forth doing my push-ups or whatever. And most of my boys are out, like they're doing, like we all work at different places and stuff. I guess they were at work or whatever. And eventually this dude approaches me, and he sticks out his hand to like introduce himself and be like, "Hey, I'm so and so." And I'm like, what the like, why are you introducing yourself to me, man? Put your hand down. And he's like, well, I'm just trying to make a friend. I'm like, look here, dude. I know what the fuck you're doing. If you even look at me again, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you, dude. Like, I don't play that fucking stuff. Get the fuck away from me. Don't look at me. Like, I don't know who the fuck you think I am, dog, but you need to fucking learn. Like, I know you're new here, but figure out who people are before you approach them. And that was that. That dude, he literally did not look my way ever again. Long story short, on the other one, me and that dude became friends somehow. I don't know. Like, I guess he
The
did want to
squirrely
test
eye
me.
guy.
Yeah, like the big dude who approached me about looking at him. I think he really wanted to see if I was gonna stand on something, right?
Yep.
Because they want solid dudes in their crew, and they want to see how you're gonna react. They want to see if you're gonna cause problems. And it wasn't immediately, but you know, as 6 months, a year later, whatever, you get to know everybody else, and that was like my crew. Like that was people I hung out with. There are there are gangs and things like that, depending on what prison you're in. The one I was in didn't have so many at the time. There are now. There's some gangs that kind of run it, and there's a lot of problems. But then you just kind of had, you know, your group or whatever, and everybody kind of minding their own business. And like you were saying, Landon, there are times where people in those loosely affiliated groups or gangs would, you know, send hits out on people for whatever reason, not to necessarily like do severe damage to people, but you know, they want to send a message and stuff. Fortunately, I wasn't involved in any of that. I made sure like off the top, like, hey, look, we can kick it, we can all be friends or whatever, but I'm not I'm not getting into any of that shit because a lot of it was drugs, a lot of it was gambling, and I'm like, I'm not gonna take part in any of that shit. And if you guys don't want to associate with me because, you know, I'm soft and I don't want to deal with that, that's cool. But I don't need that in my life. I'm trying to find my case. And then everybody respected it. Like I think in prison as in life, if you are upfront with people and you tell people what's up with you and how to treat you and you treat people with the respect that they deserve, then you're going to get that, right? But I think a lot of people in that environment, they nut up and they're afraid, and that'll come out and get you, man. And it's small things like that in prison that I see get people more than anything. Um, there's
Well,
another
you
one. It's like,
you
go
had a
ahead.
conversation one time about, a guy that you and him were kind of boys, right? And like you overheard him say something or whatever, and he kind of looked at you and you look, to unpack that. I mean, because that's kind of crazy to me, right? Like it was like, yeah, you kind of had a moment where it's like two dogs staring each other down, like, are we gonna do this or not? And I mean, unpack that one.
Yeah, for sure. That was that was an interesting one to me. That was so I had been on the yard for a few years at this point, and as I was saying in the previous one, you know, prison is a very segregated place for most parts, right? I mean, people play ball together or, you know, like work out together or whatever, but when you get to your cell, when you get to the chow hall, people sit separately, everything like that. It's a strange environment. So you don't get to know people that aren't your same race that well. It's a messed up place. So I'm working in the wing. Fortunately, I was capable of getting a few jobs. It's tough to get jobs in there. You got to be connected and all that. So I was working a few jobs. Mine was, I don't even know, it was like passing out ice or something. And this dude, I think his name was Tate. Like, you know, it's not his real name, but nobody uses a real name in there. Tate, it's a pretty cool dude. We knew each other from ball, and but I didn't know him that well. And he was talking to somebody else behind the door, and I just happened to be walking by, and he's, you know, talking shit about white dudes, like pretty bad. And I'm like walking by, and I can't not be noticed by him. And he like looks at me, and I'm like looking at him, and like some dudes would be really offended, right? Like I don't talk about people like that, but I'm sure if I did and somebody heard it, they'd probably want to fight me. So he's looking at me like, oh shit, I didn't know there's a white dude right behind me. I'm talking shit. And even though we were cool, still, you know, it could be an issue. And he's like, man, I didn't mean no offense to you or nothing. I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit. Whatever. Like, you know, doesn't matter to me. But the reality is in those situations, some people will try to fight you right then. Some people might go and they tell their boys and then they try to start like a little war thing. And so I'm like, I walk away and I'm like, shit, I hope he doesn't think I am pissed because I'm not. I don't care. And then he's going to come and get me thinking I'm going to come and get him. And I'm like, yeah, this is bad. So I asked one of my good friends in there. I'm like, hey man, you know Tate? He's like, yeah. It's like because there's a dude named Tate and Boot Hill, and they were like super tight. And I'm like, do they? You know, I mean, they roll together pretty hard. Like, are they tough? Like, they seem kind of a little bit scary. And he's like, oh no, man, they're soft, they're weak, they ain't talking about it. They're not gonna do nothing. I'm like, good, all right. So I don't even really think about it too much. Literally, like 4 or 5 days later, I'm in the gym working out. Everybody's in there just doing their thing. They shut the gym down. Fucking goon squad runs in. It starts like pushing everybody against the walls. They tell us all to take off our shirts, and we had to like hold our hands out because there's like something had just happened. And it turns out this literally happened probably 15, 20 feet from me. and I didn't see it. But like it was in the bathroom next to the gym, which is open, and they came up on this other dude who was Tate Boot Hill, and they stabbed him like 15, 20 times.
Not
And
exactly soft in my
not exactly.
definition. I
And
don't
there's like a
know.
blood trail, yeah, out the gym and everything.
It
And
was like a sprinkler.
I'm like, wait a minute, who did that again? They're like, oh, it was Tate Boot Hill, dude on for drugs or whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. I chose the right people not to piss off. Which is funny because then I ended up going to the hole and I was in there with Boot Hill, and they would let us out into these cages every now and then, and it was like right before it got super cold. So I was out in the cage and I'm like, hey, Boot Hill, what's up, man? It was just us two. And he's like, nah, well, not whatever. And he's starts talking about it. And he's like, yeah, this so and so, he's a piece of shit, this, that, and the other. He said he was going to get us back. And so we just ran up in there and he's telling me all about it. I'm like, golly, like it is absolutely insane to one, be there when something like that happens and then go through the experience of like them, like they video record you, right? Because they're trying to get evidence on whoever did it and all this. I mean, that's obviously a crime. And we were locked down in the gym for hours because they actually ended up escaping the gym and getting to the yard, and they found them. It was a whole thing. But then when you're there and you're like, the person is telling you about this crime they committed, and that you like were right there, and then like you were thinking a week earlier, like if you pissed them off enough, that might be you. That's a terrifying thing. And like I took note of that because when I was in the hole, I was coming out. There's a guy in the hole. I mean, this is like you could just go on for story after story. They're generally small things, but they're terrifying. And the hole was a whole different experience, man. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to walk out of there alive because they had dual solitary confinement. And then imagine being locked in your bathroom, something size of your bathroom, 24/7 with a person who is very unstable, who has lost their lives. They think they're alpha, so they want to control things, which
You're in that small space together,
With somebody
not by
else? I thought it
yourself.
was by yourself.
yeah. So the most dangerous place to me in prisons is not the yard, which a lot of people think it is, and it is a dangerous place. People are scared to go to the yard. It's kind of sad, really, that people don't have the mental fortitude to go deal with that. But it's actually so when you go to the hole, you go to first solitary confinement, which is just yourself, right? And they don't have a name for the next step. So there's phase 1, 2, and 3. I can't remember if it's 3, 1, and 2, 1, 2, or 3. I think at 3 is like you're coming out. 2 is the worst one, and 1 is solitary. So solitary confinement sucks. I was in there for quite some time,
Why?
like 4 months.
Like,
Huh?
like, why did you have to go in there?
Well,
Oh
wasn't that
man.
when
Like,
when someone
if
like
you had
looked
a
at your mom
job,
wrong or something?
No, that was so yeah, we did talk about that one. That was in the county jail where I did flip off the COs
yeah,
through glass, and that was actually the one time I actually deserved, to go to the hole. I mean, I actually did what I was accused of flipping off the CO. This one, however, I had nothing to do with. So this goes back pretty far, but we had our appeals going on. We had the primary witness in the case. We found evidence that they told the prosecutor that Erickson and I were not the people that she saw, and the prosecutor withheld that evidence from us. And they found out that we now had that evidence and had the testimony from her, exposing them and getting the truth. And so that was all about to come out in a hearing, and they locked me up. Basically, they wanted to get rid of me and they wanted to vilify me. So obviously, I don't know this is going on, but I am on the yard. Everything's normal, and we go to the gym. And so I leave my cell. I go to the gym. Literally 5 minutes later. I mean, it was almost immediate. A It was the sergeant, which is strange too, because sergeants don't generally come and get you off the yard. It's usually a CO. Sergeants are higher up. So sergeant comes and pulls me off the yard, and he's like, "Hey Ryan, I gotta take you back to the house. We got a problem." I go, "Okay." It's weird. And so I see them getting my cellie too. And so me and my cellie, who actually gets out in like a month, good dude. He's been in there for 30 years. I trust the dude. I know he didn't have anything. So they get us into a room and they're like, so we found a couple razor blades in your cell, which is a weapon, Rule 2 violation. It's like the second worst thing that you can get in trouble for. It's basically a year in the hole.
Ugh.
And yeah, it's not a good thing. And I'm like, look, I know I didn't have it, and Rob says he didn't have it. That's my cellie. And I'm like, if he says it, I believe it. Like, I don't think the kid would have it to begin with, and he has no reason to have it. And if he says he didn't, and that's what he's telling me, I believe him. So that on top of the fact that so I got along good with the inmates, but the COs did not like, they thought, I guess, they thought I was cocky because, I did get along with everyone. I was in really good shape. I created a world for myself, like I said, where I was positive. I stayed up. I stayed working out. I stayed in the books. Like, I stayed moving forward. And they don't like to see people doing that in prison. They want to see you depressed. Like, COs, their job is to come in there and make sure that problems don't happen. But for whatever reason, I mean, it's kind of like one of the worst jobs you can have in the world. They don't pay you anything. You have no education. Like, you're one step away from prison yourself. A lot of them will admit that. And so these people kind of come in and want to make people's lives miserable. They beat up on people. There was like the Stanford experiment. I don't know if you guys know much about it. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's the Stanford. Yeah, and they had like kids kind of be COs over other kids for a couple weeks or months or whatever. And they had to stop it because being put in that environment where you have control over someone, you end up abusing it and abusing those people. That's kind of how prison is, right? And for whatever reason, I stood out because I was on the news and, I was in good shape or whatever. So they had been in my cell and tore my cell apart previously, like basically at least once a month. They would come in and they would completely tear my cell apart. Like, everything I owned was just on a pile in the middle of the cell, tore open. They tore my pillow open. I didn't have a pillow for months. They would take my blankets. Yeah, I mean, they basically kept messing with me, trying to get me to lose my stuff, and I never did. Um, because I'm not gonna let them beat me, and there's just uh, bigger things in the world. And so I know that if there ever was something in that cell that wasn't ours, they would have found it a long time ago because they were in there all the time. So this guy, CO, goes in there apparently in 5 minutes. He moves one thing, finds these razor blades, and they're like, "We're gonna send you the whole." The sergeant, what they didn't account for is the sergeant knew me so well. He's like, "I believe that Ryan and Rob didn't have this weapon. Like, these dudes don't need it. They 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 don't need to fight anybody. They don't have problems with anybody. They're smarter than getting into fights. And if they ever did have a problem, I think they'd be able to handle it without weapons." So basically, he was like, "I'm not going to send them to the hole," which created a whole additional issue because now people know we got taken off the yard for razor blades and they think we're snitching because we're not going to the hole, which I didn't see that coming. So
Oh
the next
shit.
day,
Yeah, I never thought about that.
yeah, so
Like,
the
you
next
don't
day they
have,
put,
everybody else has consequences, but you guys don't have consequences? Like, yeah,
well,
that would be an issue, huh?
yeah, not initially. So we actually stayed out of the hole that evening. And then the next day they came and shook down the entire house. Now I was in housing unit 3. Housing unit 3 is the alpha house. If you're young, unmarried, or you're wild, that's where you are. Lots of fights, lots of stabbings. That's like basically it's the Thunderdome in the prison I was in. Like, you know, you better be on your P's and Q's if you're in that housing unit. A lot of people actually like being in there because it's more lively. It's not lame. So whatever. I don't really care where I'm at. I'm gonna do what I got to do and survive. So I'm sitting on the yard while they're shaking down the house, and people that like are part of our buddies or group, they're like only two of them. They approach me like, "So, like, what's up? Why didn't you go to the hole? You a snitch?" And I'm like, "Man, you need to get the F away from me, dude. Like, no way in hell would I ever do that shit. I'd rather go to the hole for 5 years than, I could be in here for the rest of my life and have that rap on me and all this other stuff." So it was a whole situation. Fortunately, nothing came of that, but it's scary because those dudes could just start jumping you and shanking you right there because they think you're a snitch, or other people in the house would think you don't know it. So you're in this yard surrounded by probably 200 people, and probably most of them were saying shit about you at that point. I didn't realize it, but eventually, they shook the house down, and then they did send us to the hole because the higher up was just like, "No,
He
it
must
doesn't
have got the
matter if you."
message.
Yeah, the sergeant was like, "Man, I had no control over it." So here's the interesting thing about that: did a year in the hole, got out. A year after that, I heard that Charles Erickson the other kid on this case, went to the hole about 2 weeks after I did because he got into a fight with his cellie and hurt him. He got an additional charge for it. Which is why I heard about it, right? Because it's in the newspapers. What's very interesting is the reason he got into a fight. Wait, no, that happened. Oh, okay. So yeah, the reason I heard about, so he actually at that time he went to the hole. And I won't say why yet, but I found out about it because 2 years later or a year later, he got out of the hole and then went and fought his cellie. So the reason he ended up going to the hole in the first place was because they found razor blades in his shoe in his cell. So what happened, I believe, is they set me up. They realized they messed up. It was in a public space in the room. So they got both of us. They put me and my cellie in the hole. Whenever they went and did it to Erickson, it was 2 weeks later, they learned. So they're like, we got to put it in his personal property. So they put him in the hole for a year and for the exact same thing. They weren't even creative enough to do something different. And then Erickson believes his cellie set him up. So gets out of the hole, hits his cellie, gets another charge, and goes back to the hole. That's why I ended up hearing about it. Now, do you think it's coincidence? And he is so convinced that he didn't have these razor blades that he potted his cellie, right? I know they weren't mine. I know they weren't my cellies. So just randomly, within a 2 week span in two different prisons, we both get locked up on razor blades. It's just, so
So
where that came from.
what's the purpose? I mean, outside of messing with you guys, like you had mentioned that there was evidence that they suppressed evidence.
Mhm.
So when you're in the hole, are you not able to like talk with a lawyer, or like what was the purpose of putting you guys away for that period of time?
Good question. So I obviously speculation. I don't know exactly what they were thinking, but ultimately, if you're in the hole, it is more difficult to work on your case, right? You don't have access to the phones, your lawyers, you can't reach people. I mean, you are like locked away deep down inside. I didn't use the phone for the first 6 months, I don't think. And then after that, I could use like once a month or something like that. Um, and then also it beats you down, so you lose your will. People lose their will to survive in some cases. It's a very, very difficult thing for people to survive. People kill themselves in the hole. They give up hope, whatever. It's a very, very difficult environment. But I think one of the biggest things is they wanted to take away the public knowledge of what they had done. And by putting us in the hole, they were able to further villainize me specifically. So what's really interesting is people will get killed in prison and you won't hear about it. It won't be in the news. It won't be in the newspaper. It won't be mentioned anywhere. People get killed. Um, Whenever they put me in the hole for a Rule 2 violation, they made it sound as though I had a machete in my cell and I was coming after everybody. That's the way it was talked about on the news. That's the way it was in the newspaper because this is local. And local is going to report on whatever the police and the prosecutors want them to, right? So they did that when I initially got locked up in the hole. Then I think it's like every 2 months or 3 months, every 60 days maybe, you had a hearing to determine whether or not you were allowed to get out of the hole. Most of them were BS because they will extend. You're going to do 6 months no matter what, right? So they just say, due to the severity and like fear that you created, we're going to leave you in the hole because you are not rehabilitated or whatever. And you are not. So they literally would put on the news that I was a threat to the prison population, and because I was so like crazy or volatile or whatever, that they had to leave me in the hole. And so every 2 months they'd get that story and that would go on the news. Like literally my hearing to get out of the hole was on the news, which is just the most absurd thing ever. Never have I heard of any prison happenings like talked about on the news, let alone something like that. So it was their opportunity to basically reach back out to the public and say, this is a terrible person. We should not give them the time of the day. It doesn't matter what evidence they have come up with. We shouldn't even listen
We still
to
got
it.
the right guy.
Still got the right guy. He's a threat to people in prison. Like
Yeah.
they're so
Think about what he
scared
is to
of
the outside world.
yeah, they're so scared of him in prison that they put him in prison. So we shouldn't let. And that's literally what they did. So anyway, that's a whole thing. Honestly, I'm waiting. We're gonna investigate that. I already have talked to private detectives. So I hope they hear this. I mean, it's close enough to where we're about to send them out. But the reality is I know who the CEOs are who set it up. They were probably paid a nominal amount of money to do that. And I want to know who paid them, because it wasn't the prison who did it. It was somebody outside of the prison, almost certainly in the prosecutor's office. So that's, almost a certainty. But we'll find out. We're gonna get to the bottom of it. We're gonna ask a lot of questions, and have people do their investigations. It'll be fun. There's a lot of things that we look forward to doing in the next year or so, in regards to things like that. But anyway, so you had this solitary, people lose their minds. So just cover it really quickly. I know we got to move on. The most dangerous part, I've always said, was it's still solitary confinement. Like, you're still like in your hole 24/7, 3 showers a week. They feed you in there. There's no entertainment. You might get a book once a month. It's literally, you're just looking at four walls by yourself. Like, you might get a newspaper if you're lucky. People will, share magazines. That's about it. And I mean, that's it for months and months and months. But in phase two, they do that and they put a double bunk in there. So you're in there with another person. So there's zero, you can get cards. So you can play cards with that person. And it's just you. I mean, imagine just you two. You know each other very well. Can you imagine being locked up together in a 10 by 10 foot box for months at a time? Like,
No.
you're gonna lose your stuff.
I
You
love you,
can't talk to
Landon,
anybody.
but I'm
Yeah.
good.
It's scary, man. Like, the most normal of and humble and chill people lose their minds, and these are not those people. So there are many sleepless nights that I had where my cellie want, like, sometimes they lose their stuff and kick the doors and throw trays of food and want to piss off the COs. And then if that happens, they lock both of you up. You both get violations. They'll mace you both. They like basically take a canister of mace, open the chuck
Well,
hole.
in a 10 by 10 cell, you're both getting it no matter
Oh yeah.
what.
Yeah, and if you reach your hands out to get locked, because to open the door in the hole, you have to be handcuffed. So you turn around backwards, you put your hands out through the chuck hole, and they handcuff you. Now, if you do that when your cellie is in that state of mind, they're going to attack you. And while they're attacking you, the COs won't open the door because they're not handcuffed. So it's like you have to just wait it out and hope they don't dump a can of mace on you and beat the crap out of you and give you another violation. So I would have to de-escalate the situation with those cellies. Other cellies get so like pissed off and frustrated and everything. They want to fight you, just because they're angry and they're upset and they
Just wanna
think
hit
that you
something.
didn't flush the toilet or whatever it is. Yeah. And so you had to de-escalate that, because I mean, you fight in that environment, it doesn't end. Like,
Yeah, no. I
I've
was gonna
heard
say you're fighting to the death if you're in a 10 by 10 cell, right? Because what are you gonna do when he gets back up?
you
You're
are,
gonna
dude,
go again.
it's the worst thing I've ever heard. Like, I've heard those fights, and basically you just hear squeaking of shoes like on the floor, and then you hear thuds, and you hear, like, I've heard cries for help, like whimpers. I've heard people, be victims of rape. Like, it's the shit that you hear in there, to me, was the worst, because fortunately I was able to protect myself, and not be one of those individuals, or not get into a situation. But I was very, very close to it a lot of times, and I was able to de-escalate it, fortunately. But you hear it, and these people are, I mean, they're being victimized, like, then and there, and you see them carried out bloody, and it's I mean, that will never, that doesn't leave you. It's just
No.
Seems like a very primitive environment. Like, you just strip everything away. It's like, all right, let's see how humans are wired in their worst of worst circumstances.
That's a good way to put it, David. Yeah, I mean, it is, and you feel like an animal. I believe it is designed to make you feel like an animal. You're a dog in a cage, and
Yeah.
they want you to know that. They want to remind you of that daily. And I mean, all it takes is a dog to show its teeth, and the other dog's going to start fighting, and then it's just, it's on. I mean, you see it
Do
in
you
a
think
dog park. That's literally how it goes.
do you think it'd be better with system like a lot of them have in South America, where the prisoners themselves just kind of run the prison and the CEOs just kind of hang back and let things shake out?
I think there are certainly environments across the world, some in Europe, South America, where there is a lot less interaction from the COs and more responsibility given to the inmates. Because when you give people responsibilities and you treat them like human beings, they're probably gonna act more like human beings.
That was kind of my thought behind it. Like, give them something to work at every day, right? Like,
Yes.
I don't know what book it is, but right, you got to have a dragon to slay every day, right? You got to have a reason, a purpose every day, right? And I feel like if you gave them some sort of hope and like, okay, yeah, this shit sucks. We're not getting outside of these four walls, but if we can create a community in here and kind of some sort of systems and structures, is the intelligence or acumen? I mean, I don't want to assume everybody in prison's dumb. Obviously, that's not the case. But is there could
But
that realistically happen or survive? Could that
but
is that
that
something that's fathomable?
I feel like that would take away from the point that was made earlier, though, about this, that would take away power from the COs who, in any other circumstance, are powerless people, from what Ryan said, right? So I don't feel like they would even want to allow that.
Well, that is a truth. But to get to the point of what Lannon's trying to create, it would, I think, come from a higher authority, right? So then the COs
Agreed.
wouldn't
Yeah.
have the power that they have. So if it's up to the COs within institutions to make those rules, it would never happen. So it would have to come from higher up. And I think there's two issues. One, it has to come from maybe even state legislatures. It has to come from bigger groups outside of the institutions themselves. The other issue is that within America, land of the free, we have more incarcerated people per capita than anywhere else in the world. So there are over 2 million people incarcerated presently in America. And with such high numbers, it is very difficult to create a system like that, right? We are more in the system of uh like herding people. It's just like a cattle farm as opposed to other places. I think they have better ways of helping people who have criminal behaviors or who have committed crimes, right? Getting them help before prison, so that the prison population is lower, so that you can have programs to actually help the most severe and worst criminals. So that would be good, I think, if we had programs that actually help people. Because right now, the only programs that exist, I mean, they have like some drug programs, but they're not there to actually help. They're there just to tick a box off, right? To get sometimes more money for the state. And they're not there to rehabilitate people and give people better opportunities. Quite to the contrary, like, if you're a felon, then here in the United States, in almost all states, you can't vote anymore, right? It makes it more difficult to get a lot of jobs. You have served your time, you've been punished for whatever it is, crime that you've committed. You get out, and then it's difficult to even then get back on your feet because they don't give you a lot of good opportunities. They're like, well, you can't work here because you're a felon, but you can go work at McDonald's. Like that's not going to provide a good lifestyle for a lot of people and mentally stimulating. Like some of the worst kids in school are the kids who are smart, but they're not able, they're so far ahead that they're bored and they do stupid stuff. Prison, actually, like you're saying, Landon, is not full of dumb people, most likely. Absolutely true. There are some brilliant people in prison. Some of the smartest people I've ever met are in prison. They had rough childhoods. They might have some issues with mental stability or whatever. There's a lot of different reasons why people end up in prison that could be helped, but there are a lot of very smart people who've done a lot of bad or dumb things, made one big mistake or a couple mistakes in their life, and that will forever impact them. And it's sad because the creativity and the ingenuity of people I have seen in there, it's mind-boggling. Like there are a lot of people in there who are way smarter than me. Now there are a lot of people who, on the flip side, it's sad they've never been taught to read. You get everything. It's like the real world. You get the gamut of everything. But there has to be programs before prison, I think, to help people through situations. And the United States does not provide that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know the solution to it. It hasn't been my primary focus. It's something I wish I had more time to focus on, as I'm more in the wrongful conviction arena, where I'm trying to stop innocent people from going to prison. Because I think we said prior, if it's easy to stop an innocent person from going to prison, right? I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of resources. You just got to do the right thing as a policeman or prosecutor. You have to have accountability for their actions, which there is no accountability right now. So if you have the accountability, you stop innocent people from going to prison. If an innocent person goes to prison, on average, it takes, I think this is like a rough estimate by the Innocence Project, but about 300,000 in 10 years to get that person out. So, where's
$300,000
300,000?
in 10 years.
Yeah, because a lot of the appeals are kind of BS. They're not going to independent, they're going back to the judge that sentenced you. And the judge that sentenced you is basically best friends with the prosecutor who prosecuted you. It's just like all these things. So that's difficult. And if we can prevent that, obviously, you're going to save many, many years of human beings' lives. You're going to protect the community more, which I think is probably one of the most important things, because when an innocent person goes to prison, there is somebody who is very bad and violent out there doing what they were doing. There are cases where prosecutors have had evidence of the person who's committed the crime, but because they've already gone down the path of an innocent prosecution and succeeded getting that, they hide the evidence of the guilty party. They even use the guilty party to convict the innocent party in some cases. And then that guilty party who didn't get prosecuted went out and killed,
Recommitted.
raped, or
Yeah.
did bad, like the worst of things to other people. And that
But
could
why
easily,
wouldn't you when you know you're off scot-free, right? The
it's
person who's
insane.
out, quote unquote, doing this is locked up, so I'm free to go.
Like there are the proven cases of that. And then the prosecutor, even then, has not been held accountable for their actions.
So when you, I'm trying to envision one of the things uh, that like touched me the most, like kind of tearing up, is seeing your dad's role in all this, from the phone calls that were shared during the documentary, and meeting with these witnesses that, where the evidence was suppressed. So walk us through, like when you went into prison, was your dad like, I got you, we're going to figure this out? Was he like, hey, I have no idea how to do this, but I'm going to figure this out? Did he stop working to focus on, like, I feel like this is a full-time job in and of itself. Like, walk us through the stages from walking into prison to how you ultimately were able to get out, and
Yeah, great, great
your
question.
fathers. And I don't want to discount anyone else, because I'm sure you had a lot of help from other family members and attorneys and whatnot. Like, that's a whole thing we got to unpack.
Yeah, I mean it is a great question and it's very loaded, right? You could I could talk for days about this, so I'll try to try to keep it short. The reality is that without family, I wouldn't be here talking to you today, right? I would have lost my mind. I would not have been able likely to get the evidence I needed to prove my innocence. It would have been a very, very difficult uphill battle. I mean, even significantly more than it already was, right? Because it took me 10 years to prove my innocence with the criminal justice system as it is today. So from day
It
one,
really took all of about 5 minutes, but
that's true.
unfortunately, it played out to be 10 years. Yes.
Good point, man. Yeah, I mean, everybody could see it very quickly. I mean, you show them the
Yeah.
evidence, like, oh, obviously. But for the courts to, you know, acknowledge that, and so they have this thing with the courts, and it's basically like they try to uphold convictions, the integrity of the criminal justice system by not overturning convictions, right? Which I don't agree with. If something's wrong, it's wrong. But so if we got to get away from that standard. I think we'll have more reliability in our criminal justice system if we do acknowledge its faults. I mean, it's a human system. There are faults, and that's okay. We just got to make them better. And I think there's a lot of, I want to say really quickly that there are a lot of good prosecutors. There's a lot of great judges. There's a lot of great police officers out there. I am not anti-law enforcement at all. I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, and if we didn't have them, we would not have the society we have today.
And knowing you
So
the way I do, I would say you're very pro law enforcement. Like
I
you're
am.
like, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And I'll support
Just
them. I mean, my wife's
anti
father's
bad
cop.
apples.
I'm very anti bad apples in every respect. So yeah, and I think that's the thing is like a lot of people talk about the negatives in our criminal justice system, but we have to acknowledge the fact that, this is our criminal justice system. We can make it better, and it is doing a lot of good for us. I mean, a heck of a lot of good for us. So, everything can be improved. But on that note, whenever my father and I first talked, even my mother and father really, I was like, look, I have nothing to do with this. I have no
Were they
idea
still
what's
married
going
at the
on.
time? Sorry, Ryan, not
They
to
had
interrupt,
just separated,
okay.
not too
I
long
just
before
didn't
that,
know.
which is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was difficult because they were, they were separate, and it was kind of trying to
So you
navigate
were kind
that.
of talking to mom, talking to dad. It probably wasn't, I mean, a little
Well,
bit
at
of,
that time, they did come together, and I would give them, man, they are like the best parents I could ever. Honestly, I spend a lot of my life now just trying to be able to hang out with them as much as I can because I love them so much, and they're the best thing in my life.
I know
Um,
I'm looking forward to meeting your old man after watching the documentary. Like I got to meet the guy
oh,
eventually. Like
he's
hopefully he
awesome.
comes to
Well,
Nebraska sometime and I get
oh
the
yeah, he'll
invite to
be
meet
here.
him because he's a badass dude. If you guys haven't watched the documentary, like that guy
He's
is,
the
I would
best.
aspire to be a fraction of the dad that that guy is. Like he laid it all out.
Was
Oh, I think you
there
have been, man, to your kids. Yeah.
was there ever like a moment where it was like, all right, Ryan, like, did you do this? Or like what? Or was there like never a doubt? Was there like a hey, we gotta ask, like, did you do this? Like, what was that like? That this had to be the very beginning stages, of course.
Right. So that is, I think this is one of the most important things. I'm glad you're asking it because to me, this is where I think a lot of cases go wrong. Um, so I talked to my parents and I was like, look, I have nothing to do with this. Don't know what's going on. Don't know why I'm here. I feel like they'll be able to investigate it and clear it up pretty quickly. Um, but at the same time, I told my parents, I don't want you to go out and just say, like, my son couldn't have done this because he's a good kid. I don't believe he's capable of it. None of that. Don't do that because that doesn't mean anything, right? I hate seeing that. What I wanted my parents to do is look at all the evidence, right? So they have this thing called discovery. Discovery is what the state gathers. It's all the evidence against you. It's testimony, it's forensics, it's everything. And that's given to the defense. Like we get that. Of course, they try to hold that from you as
Suppo-
long as possible so you can defend yourself.
Supposed to get all of it, but yeah.
Yeah, we didn't quite get all of it. Anything that was very beneficial, they kind of helped from us. But fortunately, after a long time, we got more of it, most of it. And I think there's still things we haven't gotten, of course. I think they've destroyed things that would have proved what they did even more. But who knows? There's still things coming out. So we had a long battle just to get discovery because they do what they can to delay that and basically the prosecutor knows it's a game. The longer they can keep you in the county jail, the more you kind of lose your mind. You get impatient. You higher probability of taking a plea deal. The more difficult it is because you have less time to actually prove your case and fight that case for yourself in court. So they hold that. But finally, we were able to get the discovery, and I told my parents, look, I want you to look at everything. You have access to every single shred of evidence, and I want the media to have access to every single shred of evidence. There's nothing that is off limits because I have nothing to hide. And my father was able to get the discovery, and that's kind of the turning point. Went through everything, and we wanted to be the opposite of what the prosecution was doing in this case because they were just saying, it's just like hyperbole. Like, oh, we believe he was doing this or that. Like this is what we think the evidence is going to say. This is but none of it was fact. None of it was truth. None of it was documented. What the prosecution was saying, but we decided anything that we said to the public, anything that we said to the media, had to be documented. So we're coming at them with pure fact and pure fact that we can say it's police report 142. Here's the evidence. Here, page 89, you can see this testimony. You can see this piece of forensic evidence, whatever it is. And that is where we operated from. So that I think is the most important thing. If you are in this situation, don't just go out there and say, I believe in the person or they're good people or, they couldn't have done it, or they're innocent because of A, B, and C with nothing to back it up. Go get the facts and present the facts and only the facts, because then you develop credibility and people will actually listen to you. People will start looking at the reality of the case, and it takes years. I mean, it is a long, long, hard struggle. But that's the game that we played, right? We played a fair game that was only talking about truth and fact, and we were playing against an opponent who didn't play that same game, right? They cheated. They had a lot of opportunities to do things that weren't within the weren't in the rule books. So that's where we were as a family. And I think they believed in my innocence always, but once they were able to see the evidence, they knew I was innocent. And that's what I told my followers that were on Facebook. We ended up getting around 100,000 on Facebook. A lot of people supporting us, and they would say, "I believe in you." I say, "Look, I appreciate that. I love that. I don't want you to believe in my innocence. I want you to know my innocence." And a lot of those followers went out and knew it. They looked at the facts. They read everything. They went through it themselves. When I met my wife, she she was like, I was really into you,
I'm gonna
but
have to have this
also,
conversation with my family, so I better
yeah.
learn it.
She's like,
Sure.
I went through all the facts. She's like, I believed you were innocent. It looked pretty obvious, but I had to do the investigation for myself and look through the facts myself. And I'm like, I'm glad if you didn't do that, I would not want to be with you, right? I wouldn't feel comfortable being with
Do you
you.
get to get discovery from her and her background? She got to look at all your shit.
Well, I investigated. I asked all our friends and put some things. No,
He unpacked that over time.
it's the weirdest thing in my life. I've had to live in a world where I have no secrets. I have zero secrets. Like my life completely open, every aspect of it.
I mean, dude,
And
just to put this into context, David, like the weird thing, like, so I knew more about Ryan without ever having a conversation with him due to some guys at pickleball that were like, "Yo, you know who that is?" I'm like, "No, he seems legit. He's a hell of an athlete. Like, love playing with him. It's nice to not beat up on 80-year-old dudes anymore. Like, likes having some young blood." They're like, "Yo, you got to hear the story, right?"
Sounds
So then, of
like
course, what do
sounds
I
like
do?
you're in prison land and beating up on 80-year-old dudes.
Well, I mean, it's like it was just like that was the first thing people talk about, and it's just like, well, why can't he just be one of the dudes? You know what I mean? But to Ryan's point, like, yeah, the cat has no secrets. Like, I was like, all right, cool. Like, I'd like to get to know him myself before I make any judgments or hear his story or whatever. And then it was just like I just naturally like the guy. But like everybody wants to talk about his story first. Yeah, there are no secrets in Ryan Ferguson's world.
no, no. And I appreciate that, Landon. I appreciate you getting to actually know me for me. And that's what I hope. I hope people take the time to talk to me, and I'm an open book. And obviously I have no secrets, so you can ask me questions about it. Like I want to talk about our criminal justice system because I think that keeps all of us safe, right? I think that it exposes a part of our world in the United States that most people don't talk about. So I'm cool talking about it, but also get to know me. If you don't like me for me, that's cool. But if you want to get to know me,
I can
follow,
relate.
ask questions. Yeah. um, and that's the interesting thing about life is you don't really generally have an opinion about someone or a strong one until you get to know them. But in this case, it's like I know everybody I meet, they probably are talking about my story, right? And who knows like what that looks like. I'll have to ask you
That's just
sometime
got to be
later.
annoying though, right?
Well, it's strange, for a long time. Like, do they know? Do they not know? I'm like, okay. And then like, I got myself a house finally, first house I've ever owned, my wife. And I'm like, well, do the neighbors? All you gotta do is Google my name. And like it pops up with things like, was incarcerated for obviously the worst of crimes, proved his innocence, won some money. It's like all these things. And it's like all the stuff that should be the most private stuff in your life. It's not. So I'm like,
Yeah,
what
it's
are the
weird
neighbors?
because like this weekend when you come out to the house, right? It was like people ask, I'm like, oh, he's just a pickleball buddy, because it's like I almost just want to like defend my buddy, and like keep like, no, like it's okay, like that's what I tell everybody. He's just a pickleball buddy, but he's got a crazy ass story. Check this out, it's like everybody just dives
After you
into it.
met him,
Okay,
yeah, check it out. Right.
yeah,
You got a lot of good people around you, man. I appreciate that. And it's
Well,
just, yeah.
it's even messed up too here. And you say, people could Google your name, incarcerated for the worst thing ever, proved his innocence, and then particularly the word that you used, won some money, like as if it was a contest. Like
Yeah.
Like that's,
Motherfucker, you earned that money.
you
Well,
know,
I tell people, was like, look, I mean, well, one, the internet says I am like rich as shit, and I'm like, wow, I wish the internet was right. It's not exactly how it really works, but yeah. So I mean, it is an interesting thing because they say you won the money, but in reality, you don't get a lot of it. You know, whatever. I got enough to support my life and start a good, solid life, which is nice. Um, but you know, if you go and talk to people, they think you got tens of millions of dollars. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like you know. So that is an interesting aspect of it. But I also tell people like, look, if you calculate working, I think what the work life is 40 or 45 years in America, 8 hours a day, every week for 50 weeks a year, you get 2 weeks off for 40 or 45 years or whatever it is. That's pretty much the amount of time that I was incarcerated, right? Because, and I'm talking about, you know, day and night, everything, because even when you are sleeping in prison, it's it's not a it's you're not getting the best sleep. You know, everybody's got their sleep trackers now. You're not getting good sleep in prison because the lights don't go off. Yeah, I got mine on.
People are getting beat.
People are getting beat up. You get woke up. The cops come and count. So they're slamming these metal doors all night long. They're shining a light in your
fuck.
face. They knock on the door to make you move, to make sure you're not, you know,
A
gone or
pillow.
yeah. So like you, and that's if everything is going okay. But a lot of nights things aren't going okay, right? You are kind of terrified of your cellie, or you're terrified of when the doors open the next day. Like and when I was in the hole, I remember, you know, previous stories, there are reasons to be concerned about people. And I had a disagreement with somebody in a different cell in the hole because he was just very loud. And it drove me crazy. I was like, dude, shut up. Just like, stop hitting the door. And so long, like after months, we ended up in the same housing unit in the hole, but we got to go out to eat. And my cellie was like, oh, these dudes, there's like four of them. They're all putting on their state grays, which means they're going to go stab somebody. And these are people that I don't get along with well. Like, I don't know if that's a good enough reason for them to stab me. So I'm getting ready to go eat. And my cellie's like, oh, you going to chow? I'm like, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to stay in today. And, and so he goes out and I close the door immediately. I'm like, what is, you know, I still have my shoes on and everything. He's like, probably thinking I'm a little bit weird, but I'm just, you know, I'm scared. I'm trying to protect myself. They go out to the chow hall. Well, they didn't, nobody came back for an hour and a half because they stabbed somebody in the chow hall. Obviously I wasn't the target. And I shouldn't have been, right? Because I had a disagreement with the people, you know, and we had some words, but it wasn't, you know, I try to de-escalate, obviously, but you never know. And they did stab somebody and they were gone. So I felt a lot more comfortable. But, you know, in that environment, when those people are there, you don't sleep well at night. You don't know what's going on. It's just a never ending struggle. You know, the days are like, it never ends. And so that's how I spent literally the entire span of a person's working life in 10 years. So, yeah, I mean, I did
A little
work.
bit of a high stress environment job, real
Oh,
correlation there too.
yeah. I wonder, you know, stress is a real thing and it takes years off your life. And I don't think, obviously I don't want to get into that. There's no scientific that I know. I mean, there are studies, but I don't know the extent of them. But the reality is I lost 10 years of my life in prison for a crime I had nothing to do with. And because of that, I will probably live less time, right? Because they've shown that people who suffer stress in their lives, not even severe stress, but like stress, live shorter. It affects different components of your body, and your mind. And so there's a high chance probability that I probably won't live as long as a lot of people based on the
I
amount of
don't
stress.
I don't know, but you're pretty yoked up, stay pretty damn active. I think what you put in your body, you'll probably live to be 100.
Well, I hope. I mean, Landon, that's why I take such good care of myself. Some people
Yeah,
think it's like, you know, oh, the dude just wants to be jacked or like vanity or this or that. The reason I take such good care of myself, mentally and physically, is because I've lost so much of my life. And I'm trying to get back every minute that I can by
makes
taking good
sense.
care of myself. Yeah. And I don't know how many minutes I'm gonna have left. You know, I mean, I think there's gonna be a lot. I think they're gonna be great. I work hard at it, but you don't know. And I'm trying to, you know, reverse the effects of what the state has done to me, right? What wrongful
Put the
incarceration has
odds in
done
your
to me.
favor, or whatever odds you can, right?
Yeah. And I think that, even if it's proven to me a great way of life. And I think everyone would feel better if they lived that way. I mean, it's not, it doesn't have to be extreme. Just exercise every day, move every day, find something you enjoy doing, a
Eat
good
real
hobby.
food.
Surround yourself with amazing people like you, and like you're being here in Omaha and finding a friend like you is great. Eating, like you said, good food, healthy food, eat a lot of fruit, try to eat just real food, right? Don't get that stuff in the center of the grocery store, all the oils and the sugars and all that stuff. Of course, you're going to have it sometimes, but if you stay away from that, stay away from alcohol as much as possible. Sure, we're going to drink, but if you do all that, you're putting yourself in a position to win, man. And that's it. Like just winning at life, winning with your relationships, winning in everything you're doing. And it's easy, right? You just got to build those habits step by step. I always say, small changes equal big results. And that's it. I'm not perfect at anything. Nobody is. I mean, some people claim to be nowadays with Instagram and TikTok or whatever. Like, you should be doing this every day and you're a pussy if you don't. Like, no, no, dude, calm down, chill out, take a breath. It's not how
And now
people.
you know why I love Ryan.
So anyway, that's just my
Well,
belief, right? You can be badass and not be 100% on all the time.
I agree with that, and Landon has some Oreos to agree with that as well.
Oh, Oreo
Yeah.
monster.
In the nightstand, homie.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You got
No,
the
say
refrigerator with some milk just in
But
case. Like, I wash these
damn
down.
right, I do. It's always dipped in milk.
love
Nice.
that. I
Back to your pops though. Like what happens like after you go in, right? Like did he shut it down? Like was just like 100% focused on getting you out?
Yeah, man,
That's
it's
the way it
nuts.
seemed.
Yeah. So he, I live every day of my life just trying to be a little bit more like him. I literally, what would my father do? Like that's what I ask myself. And we all have our inspirations, but Bill Ferguson is mine. My mother's up there. She's amazing. She did a lot as well. But in terms of the case, my father being able to investigate the case was insane. So he got the discovery, went through everything, had it completely organized. When he talked to the media, because the media would try to reach out to me, but we basically created a screen that if they wanted to talk to me, they had to go through Bill Ferguson first. And Bill Ferguson had like the 3-ring binder with
the
all the facts in it.
receipts.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, receipts, baby. And when we had like videos, we had all like police reports, everything you could want in there. And if the media looked at it and wanted some more, you can have it. Whatever you need. If you review this and you need more documentation, let us know.
We'll
You can
get it.
have it. Whatever. There's no hiding. So, and he was able to disperse that information and walk people through it in such a way that they were able to see the facts. Right. This is what the prosecution's saying. There's no documented evidence to support that. Here's the reality, right? The timeline, the reality of what's going on, and here's the documented evidence to support that. So he was able to do that as a baseline. And then he would do things like we needed to find a witness who was at the bar that night and talked about whether or not it was open or closed past 1:30. It obviously closed at the normal time. The prosecution tried to hide that fact because it didn't support their theory. And so my dad was able to find the bouncer that night. He got a name, who was working from some other people, because it's a college town, everybody knows everybody. And the guy was gone. Like he didn't live in Columbia anymore. So he heard he was in a frat. He went to the frat house and was going like looking at the boards and found
The
him.
composite.
Yeah, and because everybody's got their pictures, and he was able to see that guy. And then he asked the people at the frat house, like, "Hey, you guys know this guy? Is there a way to get a hold of him? Like, how do we find him?" And so through that, we were able to find the guy. My dad reached out to him. He was willing to talk to us. And so we are able to get, the information from him. He would do things like that on a constant basis and just be able. I feel like a lot of detectives nowadays, and there are some good ones, but again, I don't think they're as educated as they could be. I don't think they have as many resources as they should or as much time as they should. So it's difficult for them to do a proper job on a case. So what a lot of detectives end up doing is sitting by the phone waiting for somebody to call in and get a lead, right? Or taking a jailhouse snitch out of whatever prison cell they're in and giving them a reduced sentence to say whatever they want. Um, that's terrifying. But to go out and like gumshoe it, and Perry Mason this thing like my father did and really, really investigate a case, that is phenomenal. And I've seen a couple other individuals do it since then, but that was what made the difference. And then be able to gather that and then convey that to the media. So this is a big one too for what we noticed, primarily my father. I say we, like, I'm a smart guy like my dad, but he really is the genius behind everything. So what we noticed is whenever you are arrested, have you ever noticed like a person gets picked up for a crime? It's like the first day that you hear anything about it, and you see their picture on TV. Is it ever like a flattering picture? No.
No.
Right? It's the worst picture they can find of the person. They put out like basically what the police say, like this person is a suspect. We think they did it because A, B, and C, and they basically villainize you. And then they put out an article in the paper, and it's a couple paragraphs, and that's generally how people get their impression of a case. They don't really listen to a whole lot else beyond that, maybe a few articles down the road, and that information is all coming from police and prosecutors. And they don't really care what we have to say or what evidence we have, and we don't have that evidence to start with, right? In the beginning, you don't have the opportunity to talk about a case because you don't know anything about it. You're just thrown into it. So that's
Especially in your
people's
world where you have no idea what like I
exactly.
can't imagine. Yeah.
No idea what's going on. And like the only thing I'm hearing is that, and then the prosecutor getting on the news talking about they're exploring the potential of charging me with first degree murder and a death penalty, right? Which is just like, oh, they're trying to kill me now. Great. It's just insane. Like it's the craziest thing to hear, And like I obviously have nothing to do with this. Like, why are they haven't even had time to investigate the case. Why are they saying these things? It's scary, man. But that is our criminal justice system, and it happens every day. And the reality is that it happens to people like you and me, and a lot of people that don't have as much privilege as we have, more so to them. And that is true, but it can happen to any of us at any point in time. And so that's something
That's
that
the one thing I have told most people, like anybody that asks me about it, I said, you need to watch this because like it should scare the shit out of you that you could legitimately be sitting at home with your wife and family and be plucked out of there and locked up for life.
yeah,
And people
it's
kind of laugh. It's like, oh no, watch it happened to my boy. Like it's a real thing,
it
and
happened to
it's
me,
terrifying.
and I know so many other people it's happened to now. Like so many
Yeah.
people, like documented cases where it blows my mind. I feel like what happened to me is almost nothing compared to some things that happened to other wrongfully incarcerated people. I'm like, it
Like when
is that bad
when you're saying this happens every day, you legitimately mean every day you
every
think
day.
somebody innocent is locked up.
Yes. I think that hopefully now with cameras, it's less prevalent. But I think up until at least, 5 years ago, there was it's difficult to prove a lot of like prove your innocence, right? It's almost like the double negative thing, right? It's like,
I
where were
mean,
you
we
a
had
year
we had
ago
people
on,
saying that this clearly you were innocent. I had an eyewitness, and it
yeah,
took 10 years to get you out. I mean, I can't imagine like on shit where there's not much evidence. You're
no.
probably you're just fucked. You're living in there.
Well, I've investigated cases. I had a show on MTV, and we had all the resources we could ever want. And it was to look at cases of probable innocence. And one of the cases we looked at, and the kid was kind of strange. Like his family reached out to me, and they're a little bit weird. They're a little aggressive. But I was like, you know what? This might be a case of actual innocence. So I'm gonna look at it, right? Even if it's not one that I'm passionate about. And I became passionate about it because the guy was convicted on a literal ex crackhead. It was a ex girlfriend who turned into a crackhead, who basically blamed being a crackhead on him, so she could get her life back. It had, but her testimony, which had been changed multiple times and didn't make a lot of sense, is what convicted him. He's got life without the possibility of parole, and that is all that convicted him, right? Um, he might be innocent, but there's no evidence. I mean, we looked at everything, and I know what to look at, right? We looked at forensics, we looked at testimony, every single thing that we could look at with all the resources, and we can't determine if he's innocent or not. So, what's wrong with that case? He never should have been convicted, right? He was not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Could he have done the crime? Yes, but there's a high probability he's innocent. and he should have never been convicted in a case where there is a high probability of innocence and no guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Anyway, so with my father and the media, I think that's the biggest thing is him being able to turn that tide around, because local media, they villainize you. They're doing whatever the police and prosecutors want. And then we got to the national media, and all we did, they wanted to reach out to us. So first of all, people got to realize we can't make them do anything they don't want to do, right? They're like, we want to talk about this case. You can either talk to us or not. We can present them, facts and try to get them interested, and they are. And so we start feeding them documented evidence in the case, and that was it. Documented evidence. And then we exposed, like, the police and the prosecutors. We opened the books to all the evidence to them, and they all came to the same conclusion that I'm innocent. They need to expose this. And I was not able to do that by myself in prison, right? Because I don't have access to a lot of the resources that my father had, and being able to reach out to them and all the documentation and everything. So, and this stuff's in my cell, it'd be tough. So anyways, that's in a nutshell some of what Bill Ferguson has done. And it's amazing. And it's helped me, and it's helped a lot of other people in other cases in Missouri. So it's pretty amazing.
What did he do for work at the time? Like, did he have a law background? Did he just go balls to the wall? And I have a saying called FIFO, where you just figure it the fuck out. Like, on what end of the spectrum was he?
He's a FIFO.
He's FIFO. Okay.
Full out FIFO. He's in real estate. If you need to get a house in Columbia, Missouri, hit him up. He'd be happy to sell you one.
Shout out Bill Ferguson.
Yeah.
He sounds to me like the police department should have hired him on the spot.
They should have.
He's about the best detective in Columbia.
He is, hands down. Probably Missouri, who knows? But so he's in real estate, but it really did consume his life, right? During that time, it was rough because we had the Great Recession. I was arrested in 2004, I believe, beginning of 2004, and got out 2013. So real estate was pretty much dead. The market was dead at that time. And it's really, it took over his life, man. This is all he focused on. And even after we were coming out of the recession, he was so laser focused on getting new evidence, and like he wrapped his car and drove around the United States, and being able to present the evidence and documented facts to the media. There was just always something to be done, right? That it kind of ate into his ability to work and to provide a good living for himself. So fortunately, he could work enough that he could pay his bills, but that was pretty much it. I mean, he lived a very sparse life. My mother as well. I mean, she's a school teacher, and a lot of her time, energy, and effort went into this case. A lot of the money that they had went into paying for attorneys or resources to expose, things. Like, we had to put a lot of pamphlets and things like that together, like stuff that just cost a lot of money, just to produce thousands of CDs and stuff so we could send them across the world. People would want to know things, and we would send them out to everybody and make cards and flyers and, have rallies and things like that. It consumed both of their lives. And so my dad, while he was doing that, my mother, she was basically not the internet itself, but Facebook was relatively new at that time, right? Social media and being able to disperse information quickly to a large group of individuals was new. And so that wasn't my father. He would just type something together real fast, and it would probably all be misspelled and something like I would do. And people like, what is this? So he would do that. My mom would edit it.
He's
make it
obviously
actually
guilty. His dad can't even spell.
Yeah. He's putting all these weird words in sentences. And he talks into his phone or whatever. Like, it's like coming up with some random shit. So that's kind of how that would have played out. But fortunately, my mom, she was able to be able to harness that and then make it, I guess,
Massage the
palatable for
messaging.
other. Yeah. And so that, and then getting pictures, and you gotta create an environment where your support community has something to come to and can learn from. Because our whole thing was, like I said earlier, it's about the facts. It's about documented evidence. We wanted to teach people the truth, not just carry them along with like hopes and wishes and
Preach
whatever.
at him.
Yeah, like that. We're not about that. We never,
Yep.
we didn't want to go down that path. So it's a lot more work to deal with facts and evidence. Um, so that's something that my mom was able to do. And then we were very fortunate that a couple people joined on and really helped with that movement, which ultimately, I mean, we grew Facebook from, a couple thousand people to damn near 100,000 by the time I got out because of my ex, Micah Kane. She really ran that with my mother, a guy named Richard Drew. It was a really good dude. He's a producer. Not for 48 Hours Dayline, it's just kind of what he does in life. He took a keen interest and put together some campaigns that really got a lot of interest. And another guy, Mike Rognland, who worked at Facebook, was like, hey, if you create a public page as opposed to a private page, you can get a lot more followers on it. And so because of that group of individuals that were just so selfless and spent so much of their time trying to help me, a person that, they didn't necessarily know that well, but they believed in because of the facts. I was able to actually have that support system just be massive. And whenever the case got overturned, that was so necessary to let the state attorney general see that they were being watched, right? They were being held accountable, not by themselves, but by the public. And that, to me, is how we get positive change in our criminal justice system, or, in a lot of things that are wrong with systems in the United States. Everything is ran by human beings. Everything can probably be done a little bit better. There's no place in the world I would rather live than the United States. 100%, like never. This is the most amazing place on earth as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of stuff can be worked on. A lot of stuff can be better, and it's not going to be done through our politicians necessarily, or,
I think we're learning that, right? Like,
right. I think we're
you need
getting
accountability from the masses is what truly holds people in check.
truly. That's where the biggest, best changes throughout history have come from, when human beings have come together in mass to support a cause to protect themselves, really, to give themselves
Yeah.
a better life.
Say
And
enough is enough.
politics, in a lot of ways, it can, separate people. But really, we're not getting the positive change we need if we're separated, right? We got to come together. That's a whole different subject. But if
Preach.
I'm happy to work with anybody, regardless of any politics, because I think we do share a lot of the same hopes and dreams, regardless of what politics you are. That doesn't matter. Like, we want a better lives for our
We're a lot
families.
more alike than we are different as humans,
So
is
much
what I
more
always say.
alike. Yeah, let's not believe, like, buy into this shit where we're different. We're not.
Yep.
We all want the same things. Like 90% of it, we want the same thing.
Yep.
Work together, people.
I'm I'm curious. So I think about my relationship with my dad. So he calls me on his ride to work every morning.
Awesome.
If I don't answer because I'm busy or doing something or whatever, he emails me, and the email just simply says, "Hey, hope you have a great day. Love, Dad." And I say, "You too. Love, David." He calls me during his lunch break every day. And again, if I'm unable to answer, then we don't have that touch point. I don't have a lunch break normally every day. And then usually on his ride home, he'll call me. So it's like we're talking multiple times a day. Never mind the memes and reels and shit like that he sends on Instagram when he's presumably taking a dump. But anyways, sorry, Dad. But I bring that up because you had mentioned earlier in the podcast that when you were in the hole, there were, it was like a 6-month period where you couldn't use the phone. And it's not like, I would imagine it's not like hey, you're going to go in the hole, so go make a bunch of phone calls and let people know. You're just ripped from your cell and put in the hole. And I feel like that would like crush my dad, just being ripped away and not being able to like do anything about it. And granted, your father was doing what he could do about it, but it's not like he could walk in there, bitch out the COs, and pull you out of the hole. Have you spent time with your dad talking about like what that was like for him? Like I feel like there's a sense of I'm busting my ass doing everything I can to get my son out, mixed with the feeling of helplessness of like, what the, like, he did this for 10 years.
Yeah. Good
That's
question.
wild.
Yeah. So the best way I can answer that is I think I have a lot of my father in me. I don't know you as well, Dave, but I know Landon, and I feel like he's the same way. And when that happened to me, it did crush us, right? It crushed me, it crushed him, it crushed my mom. That was the worst to see. Just, your mother having to experience that, knowing you can't talk or see you or if you're safe, hear from you. It's just, I mean, that's one of the most sad things that I experienced was just knowing how my mother felt about that.
I've thought
And
about
had
that
to
too with
sort of
my
like,
mom. You know the relationship with my mom, obviously
yeah,
my dad being got like that shit would hurt.
man, so bad. Because it's just like, you don't ever want your mom to feel that way.
No. And you know she
Oh,
feels completely helpless.
yeah, it's bad. But my mom, she found her way through it, and we all did. We write letters and so on and so forth. But with my dad and the way I am in life, the way he raised me, and the way that I think Landon was raised, because from what I hear, he had an awesome father as well. Whenever that happens, you get pissed off, right? You're gonna be sad, you're gonna be disappointed at first, but then you get pissed off, and then you take action, right? Because you can either dwell in that crap and go nowhere, or you get pissed off and you move and you make shit happen. And that is who we are. That's who I know Landon is, and that's who I know probably a lot of the listeners are, and that's why they're listening to your podcast because they're kicking ass in life. And that's what I think separates the strong from the weak, man. When bad things happen, yeah, it's gonna hurt you for a few days. You might be down for a few days, but then you get up and you do stuff, right? You make life happen and you move forward and you fight the fight you can fight. And that's what we did, right? I mean, we went through a lot of situations where we were knocked down, presumably for the count, but I mean, you just get up like Rocky, man. You just get up and you keep fighting, and it makes you fight harder every single time, and you come back stronger every time. I was just Amanda Knox actually just shared something on social media, oddly enough, but it was like some of the best things in life. Like to learn, you have to feel dumb first, right? You have to go through this process of realizing you don't know shit to actually learn things, right? To get stronger, you have to break yourself down. You have to be weak. You have to, you have to suffer through that. And a lot of great things in life are that same way. And that's exactly how it was, man. We were knocked down, we were weak, but we stood up and we said, "Nah, we're coming. We're coming. We're coming even harder than you thought we were before." And thank you for the motivation, the energy, you assholes, because we're gonna make this happen. And that's what we did, man. That's how we survived, and that's how we supported one another, and that's the way it always was. And we're fortunate because, again, I would have become institutionalized and I would have had a difficult time fighting this by myself. But when I was in those moments and I needed that, my father was always there. My mother was always there. And my dad would say, "Man, I know you're messed up right now, but like you're stronger than this. You can pick
We
yourself
got
up.
you.
We gotta keep moving. Like I can only do so much out here. You got to take care of yourself in there. Don't let these people beat you, right? I mean, we have the facts, we have the proof. Like you gotta stay strong." And sometimes he would be beat down. I had to, give him a pep talk, but it's just, I don't know. That's like I look for that in people in my life. Everybody I'm surrounded by. I believe that when you kick them, they are not going to whimper. They are going to come back stronger. And if you're not like that, you're not in my life. So I'm
Amen.
fortunate to have that.
What was the turning point, the piece of evidence, the thing that was like, aha, we got it?
Oh, wow. I haven't thought about that. That's a very interesting question. There's so many.
It's not the eyewitness gal.
The thing is, there are so many. Like even when
It's
I was in
that's the fucked
the,
up part is there is so many that should have
like
been
when I
just
was in the
like,
county,
yep, no brainer.
yeah, well, I think I was talking about in the last episode. It's like when the luminol from my car would come back and the tire tool would come back and everything that they said was would tie me to this case, and I knew it wouldn't. It comes back, I'm going home. Not even gonna have a trial. So I thought it would turn then. It didn't. And then we get to the point where we had that witness, right? And we were able to show that Jerry Trump was lying, who was the witness who did testify against me. We were able to prove that Erickson was lying and his story couldn't have made sense. And we were able to prove how he was able to change his story based on the police documents and things of that nature. Um, all those things I thought would overturn the case. And then there was a time when the jury, get this, the jury comes from a pool, right, in a specific area, and it is illegal to be able to pay to get off jury duty. Well, they had a program at that time that allowed jury members to send in like $20 to get off jury duty, and even then, they wouldn't overturn the case. Even that was a technicality. I would have taken it at that point because I've been locked up like 8 years. I wanted to overturn it based on actual facts, but even then, they wouldn't reverse the conviction and then give us another chance. So what really, really got me and what really, man, talking about being kicked like hard, like jumped by everybody in the world was when I had a hearing and Charles Erickson admitted, or we can already prove that he lied, but he admitted that he lied. And by him doing that and Jerry Trump admitting that he lied, he was the primary suspect or primary witness against me. By those two admitting that they had lied, that's what put me in prison, period. Like their two testimonies. We could prove that both of them had lied. They came forward and took the stand and admitted in front of the world. 48 hours is there, Dateline's there, they're filming it. They admitted that they lied. And what's interesting is the way the legal system works is if you testify against somebody, you're probably going to get something for it. Jerry Trump, convicted child molester. We know he convicted or he molested other children. He never ended up going back to prison at all, let alone for the other crimes that he committed. So he benefited from that, right? Charles Erickson, he got a reduced sentence for testifying. All right. So they had a benefit to testifying against me. Now, to admit that they had lied is perjury, and you can get, I think, up to like 20 years in prison for a perjury charge. So there is zero benefit for them to come forward and acknowledge that they lied and admit that because they're subjecting themselves to potentially more prison time, right? That's it. So if anything, what testimony is more reliable, right? The testimony where they're gaining something or where they could lose everything. Obviously, the testimony where they could lose everything. And they're doing it just because of their conscience. So at that point, we're having the hearing, and I'm like, this is obviously over. Like, that's it. And this judge should hopefully rule on it in 6 months, and I'll go home. And this is probably about a little over 8 years into it. The judge takes a year to make a ruling on that. Like just holds it and holds it and holds it and holds it. And then on the anniversary of the murder, like the 10 or 12 year, whatever it was, makes the ruling on the anniversary of the murder, denies it. Just basically like a F you to me, to the world, to the community, to 48 hours in Dateline watching it. Everybody knows I'm innocent. At this point, everybody knows. It's so obvious. All the facts, all the testimony, everything is in my favor. And he knows it's being watched by the world. And he's just like, I don't care. I don't care about fact. I'm going to protect Kevin Crane and the police. We're all buddies, and I'm going to support them, and I'm going to deny it. And that was bone crushing, man, because like how can there be
I don't know.
zero?
I don't know how you got up from that one.
Ooh, it took a while. That one took a while, but
So then what was like, fuck, what was, how'd you get out?
yeah. So
Like-
that's just one person, right? Who presumably has, connections. And I mean, it's in Jeff City, it's next to Columbia. And you could tell during the hearing, he's like, oh, Kevin Crane, buddy, old prosecutor, or he was a judge at that time. We're both judges. Again, not against judges, but when they are protecting one another for acts, criminal acts, really, I mean, because the withholding of evidence is illegal and things of that nature. It's terrifying. And especially when you can expose it, there's cameras, national, and they don't. So yeah, at that point, we basically were like, okay, We got to go to the Western District Court of Appeals. It's separate from these individuals, right? It's 2 hours away. Hopefully there's no close knit community and connection and all that. I still had faith in people, right? Very little bit, but I had a little bit of faith. And I had hoped that someone would look at this and just judge on it based on the facts, right? Just like get out of these small world politics and look at the facts and do the right thing. I had to believe somewhere that that would happen. So we really grew social media. I mean, that's when it took off, right? Because we had the platform in place, we had all the information dispersed, and people saw that, unfortunately, and it pissed people off, right? All those people we were talking about that get up after you kick them down, they all came out of the woodworks, and they're like, "Oh hell no! Like this is not cool. Like this is so screwed up because this could be my child, this could be me, this could be my father, this could be whatever." And so many people joined the cause at that point and were like, this is unacceptable in America, in our criminal justice system. And with that support, we went to the Western District Court of Appeals. And I don't think for 1 minute like that swayed the Western District. I think they actually looked at the facts of the case. It was
Yeah,
pretty
they were like,
apparent.
no,
Yeah, and they're like,
this is yeah.
yeah, they literally exposed that judge. Like he was an
Yeah.
idiot. Like he didn't even rule.
Yeah.
Like
And good on them for doing it, right? Like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Like he contradicted himself. They exposed that, and they're like, no, this case obviously needs to be overturned. And again, if you get away from that tight little country club community that some courts exist within, then you can get relief. But the sad thing is, it takes a long time to get to those unbiased places.
Well, I was going to ask that, like, why not just start there? So there's a process involved.
Yeah, you have to go through the process. And if if you go through one stage of the process and basically that preserves that information and that subject matter so that you can actually like present it later. So you have to go through that to bring it to the next level. And if you
It's so
don't bring
stupid.
in,
It's like a gate system. You got to pass
Yes.
through one gate in order to move on to the next gate. Even if you have all the fucking information that says just pass go and release him.
yeah,
Like that's the way it should be. But it's like, nope, we got to get through gate 1 to get to gate 2.
and don't forget something at gate 1 or 2, because if you do, then you can't bring it through gate 4,
Yeah.
And I think we discussed this last time, the case where the guy was actually innocent and they were going to put him to death. And they said, well, there's no avenue for relief. So even though we know there's evidence, I mean, we know he's innocent, you still have to kill him. And the state literally argued that. It's just like, how is this an argument we're making as human beings in America, right? Anywhere, but
This is a human.
yeah,
This
like,
is a life. I don't care how shitty of a life it may be. It's a life.
yeah, you're arguing to kill an innocent person. Like what?
Yeah. Even if they weren't innocent, like, it's like,
Yeah,
unless,
absolutely.
I mean, unless they've taken somebody else, like whatever, but it's like, come on. We know they
Mind-boggling.
didn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is kind of, some of the journey. And it was, I mean, that last year was really, really difficult because it's hard to maintain that hope. It's hard to still believe in a system that, has done this to you. And it is designed in such a way that those people, those bad seeds are not held accountable. Right. And if I were a judge, if I were a prosecutor, I'd be so pissed because that makes your profession look bad, right? That puts a black eye on your profession and makes people not trust it and believe in it, because everybody can see what's happening. So that, I mean, to me is like, other than being victimized the way that my family and I were, the only people I think that would be more pissed off are prosecutors and judges. Like, so hopefully you would see them want to make these positive changes that will make their profession have the credibility that it should, because we need that criminal justice system in our society, I believe.
And we need to have integrity.
It has to have integrity. And I think that when judges and prosecutors see that and they want to create that integrity and uphold the integrity and hold accountable the people, the bad apples, then they're strengthening that system. And the weird thing is we haven't really seen that. And that's one of my goals in life, is to support judges who are doing the right thing, support prosecutors who are doing the right thing. Because if a case happens and somebody is innocent and they want to protect themselves by saying, like, not acknowledging it, that's not helping anybody, right? It's not helping the community, it's not helping that person, it's not helping their careers. So when some now are coming forward and helping those innocent people get out, saying, "Hey, maybe there was a mistake made here, maybe this information was withheld over here, so we need to expose it." Like, man, I want to applaud them and just say, like, you are doing great work and you should be reelected. Yeah, like, they think they're not going to get reelected because there was a mistake made or something like that. No, no, you are the person that should be, because you're human. Because bad things do happen, mistakes are made. In my case, they weren't mistakes. They knew what they were doing. But there are cases where there are mistakes. So anyways, I can't express how disappointing it is that there are those bad seeds, and then how disappointing it is that they're not being held accountable, and then also that there are a lot of good judges out there and prosecutors who do need our support, especially when they do the right thing, because it's hard to do in that system. It does not incentivize doing the right thing. And we know that if you give people absolute power and absolute immunity, it's going to corrupt. So, that's the situation we're in.
So I know we're coming up on time, and I say this somewhat tongue in cheek because I know the answer, but one of the things I want to end on is I want you to spend a moment and list out all the apologies that you got from the people that did the wrong thing. I want you to list out all the resources that you were provided upon walking out those doors, and all the support that you received from the system, so to speak, to help you get back on your feet.
Ah, yes, yeah, yeah.
I know this may take a little bit, but I want you to go one by one by one.
All right, I'm gonna start from the beginning. We're done. Yeah, it is crazy, and I know we've talked about it. But it is wild that when the world can see that this has happened to myself and this has happened to a lot of other people, same situations, no apologies. None of those individuals has, even with all this evidence to show what they've done. Like, they want to talk about evidence. Like, look at this evidence on you, man. Aren't you a prosecutor or a cop? Don't you deal with evidence? And don't you see that there's a whole bunch of it, like, on top of you? But none of them have admitted to their wrongdoing. Now, that said, with the lawsuit, the Columbia Police Department and certain individuals had to accept liability for their actions, which is an acknowledgement of guilt. And then they come out and be like, well, we didn't do anything wrong. Like, but you acknowledge being guilty.
Nobody even lost their job though, correct? Like, not even
at that time, they were all pretty much like retired anyways, or retiring. So no one lost their jobs.
We know homeboy, the prosecutor, got a promotion. He turned into a judge. So
prosecutor got a promotion. The assistant prosecutor turned into the prosecutor. So yeah, no, there was no accountability. No one was held accountable. No one apologized. No one has acknowledged their wrongdoing, even though we can prove time and time over what they've done. And the interesting thing, David, like you were talking about with the resources, is if you are guilty of a crime and you serve your sentence, you get out and the state will provide you resources to get your life back, right? Are they the best resources? Probably not. But they do provide assistance with, I have a friend getting out in a month, and they've put him through all types of job training so that when he gets out, he'll be able to get a good job at certain factories. And they have like a job fair that he might have already gone to. I haven't talked to him recently. That he'll be able to get out and have a job paying like $30 an hour right out the gate, right? They're helping him find an apartment, a place to live. And if he can't afford an apartment, doesn't have anything, then they got like the halfway housing that'll help, give him the opportunity for a place to live while he is finding a place of his own. And then they also provide, things like money for food stamps, things of that nature, so that you can actually eat and do things like that. And there's other programs that help you mentally, and you have the parole system, which they provide resources as well. So if you are guilty of a crime and you get out, then there are all these resources that help you move forward in life. If you are proven innocent, if you get out, and it's not like just you served your time, then they don't provide you with any of those resources, not one. So for me, wrongful conviction overturned. They opened the doors. Thank goodness. Not complaining about that. But a lot of people don't have the support I have. So for me, I was mostly fine. It would be good to have some therapy, some help dealing with
Unpacking some shit.
right.
Oh, you got to start
Depending
a
off of
podcast. They say, for
Yeah.
guys, don't go to therapy, just start a podcast.
just talk it out. So yeah, they should provide at bare minimum that for a wrongfully convicted person, but like they took you away from society for however long. For me, a decade. Some people 2 or 3 decades. Some people have been on death row that long, and then they just open the door and they don't give you anything. And a lot of people, their families are gone. They didn't have the support, so they're just get out and they're trying to figure out life. If they're lucky, maybe their attorney will help support them or something, but no state resources, no training with jobs, no help finding jobs, no help with housing, like nothing.
I bet a
And
lot
that
of
is,
people become actual criminals after not being a criminal because they come out feral looking to survive.
Institutionalized. Yeah.
well, that is, yeah. So there's two parts to that. One, if you're feral trying to survive, obviously people get desperate and they don't, if you've been in prison for 10 or 20 years, you don't know how the real world operates. You really don't. And that's just a fact, right? I went in at 19, I got out 29. Was I an adult? By age, yeah, but mentally, in terms of navigating through the world, not at all. I was in college. I was like a dumb college kid, you know? And sure, I knew how to like pay some bills and write a check. Okay, whatever. But that's about it, right? I didn't know how to navigate through the real world. I never had to like go find a real job. I worked at, Taco Bell and Pizza Hut and things like that, whatever. It is very difficult. And fortunately, I did have that support, but most people don't. So what are their options, right? They've never been in a position where they had to like gradually figure these things out. It's just all thrown in the bin once, and they don't know how to do a resume or anything. So it is terrifying that an innocent person receives I don't even want to say the least amount of support. It's just none. Um, it is mind boggling. So that is something that we need to fix, as well. There's a lot obviously that needs to be fixed. And then a sad thing is, I was talking to another person's family who was a guy who was wrongfully convicted, and I was talking to his sister, and she's like, did you ever get an apology from anybody? Has the victim's family ever like reached out and like have they seen the truth of this? And I was like, in many cases, in only 25% of cases do the victim's family see what actually happened. And they see that they were victimized as well by the criminal justice system and they didn't get the justice they deserved. So that means 75% just think, the police were right, or they just don't care anymore because they've been through so much. I mean, you think about what those families have been through, it's horrendous. And who is that at the hands of? The police and prosecutors. I saw firsthand, the prosecutor lying to their face and would hug them at the same time. And it's terrifying that is the world we live in. And of course, you're going to want to believe in the police and prosecutors. You're not going to, this horrendous thing happened to you. You're not trying to go investigate it yourself, right? You've already lost so much. You've already suffered so much. That's the last thing that you're going to
You don't
do
go
is
relive
go,
it.
yeah. And so you can't blame them for not being interested in seeking the truth, but they're living in a world where they never got justice. And the people who were there to serve and protect them did the complete opposite. Uh man, it's so heartbreaking on so many levels. And I feel a lot of weight of all that. I'm like, I'm aware of it, and there's so many problems in the world, right? There's so many things that need change and help, and a lot of people suffering. This is the one thing I'm aware of more than anything. And like, how do we
When
change this? How do we fix
I
this?
think, as I say, I think this is, at the end of the day, you are the one that changes this. At least I damn sure hope so. And I'll be there to support you and help you in any way I can to do it.
Right on, man. And this is it, right? I
You
think I
gotta,
am
people got
part
to
of
know
it.
people have to hear this story. Like
Exactly,
I
and
said,
that's it.
this shit never affected me until, like I said, it happened to one of my boys. Like it wouldn't have been on my radar. So like,
Wouldn't have been on
we
mine
just
either.
need you screaming from the top of a mountain, right? And like I said, there's not a better face and personality to represent this mission. So I say we get it done.
Right on, man. I appreciate that. And I do feel that. Like it is a responsibility of mine because it's impacting somebody a lot of somebody's as we speak, you know.
Once you've lived it, you can't turn a blind eye to it.
No.
Not a guy like you, anyways. Knowing you like I know you, no, you're not going to sleep at night until you know that you're doing what is in your power to be able to change some circumstances.
Right. Yeah. And you just take a little step every day, you know. You might try to help some individual, and that's true of the listeners as well. Like, you know, you can try to change the whole system, or you can try to change one case at a time, or you can do both. And like for me, sometimes I feel better, or like I'm accomplishing more, like providing assistance and helping with one individual case, like one person, one family. Sometimes it is trying to make a big change and trying to expose the realities of criminal justice to a lot of people, or, you know, like the bigger issues like prosecutorial misconduct and how there's no accountability. So, you know, there's a lot of things that need to be worked on. But that's it, you know, it's just like anything in life. It's one step at a time. Some days you might not get done what you want to get done. Some days you might not get done anything. Some days you might just work the entire waking day trying to solve one problem that could help change, you know, possibly one life. But you just got to do it. And in whatever issue or whatever cause you're aware of, I think it's the same thing, you know, and that's what's great about podcasts. And I appreciate the opportunity to expose this injustice about our criminal justice system. This is all of our criminal justice system, right? And I hope that you know, I can hear more from you guys and other podcasts, like just about things in the world that we need to be aware of, especially as members of this society and our community. So,
well, we appreciate you joining, man. And I know, like, before we even started recording the first episode and talking with Landon, I was like, is this something that like he wants to talk about and like relive, or is he past that? So it's cool to see that you're open to doing that for the benefit of making sure that this doesn't happen to other people. So we appreciate the time. And if we had more time, I know that there are some things that you could talk about, but there's also some things that you can't talk about just yet, things that you're working on, things that you're doing, not only to bring justice, but you know, some cool projects that you're working on your end. So we will have a part 3 to this series, not back to back to back, but probably next 6, 12, 18 months, however long it takes when you're ready to share that stuff. So we're excited to have you back. And I know you get to see Landon all the time when you guys are playing pickleball and hanging out, but next time I'm in Nebraska, you're at top of the list where we're hanging out.
yeah, let's roll, man. It'll be fun. You got to get that low key. You got to get the practice in the pickleball and come with Landon.
I know.
Wish you all the luck. We the other day he was kicking our ass. So I don't know. I owe you an ass beating, Landon.
Yes, you do. Get healed up. I'll be
I've been hitting the ball against the ball. No, I haven't done it. I'm just gonna hope it gets better somehow.
Oh man.
No, for real. Like David said, Ryan, I can't thank you enough for telling your story. It's not an easy one to hear, unfortunately, but it's I'm excited to see what you do with this mission. And like I said, anything that the Business with the Boys crew can do to help further you and Bridget's mission of getting this stuff changed, you know, we're here to help and support, brother.
Right on. I appreciate you, gentlemen. Love the podcast. Look forward to hearing more episodes in the future.
All right, for all you guys listening, really appreciate, excuse me, you guys tuning into this one. I know it's not the typical entrepreneurial business owner focused podcast, but there's some crumbs along the way that you can certainly apply to your life. / this is a story that needs to be shared. So appreciate all you guys as well.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That mean you really playing with your life. I'm about to come